not constructed simply of the fact, but also of myth. Myths are the most fulfilling form of storytelling. They serve to document, even explain the unexplainable, to operate as manuals for morality. The interplay between mythology, culture, and history is a relationship which fiction provides a perfect platform for exploring. We all have witnessed how retelling in mythology started in the initial modern phase, and how with time the nature of the stories started evolving, changing each time. I'm sure most of us wish to hear from the women writers on they rewriting history over the evolving time. With wishing you all an enriching day, this is Sindhu Panikar, welcoming you to the 6th edition of Orange City Literature Festival organized by SDR Knowledge Foundation, powered by Risoni Education. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us a very powerful dais to voice on the topic, Rewriting History, women writers who redefine mythology, fiction and culture. We have with us Madam Moupia Basu, a profound journalist with some of the top publications in the country, who has travelled extensively across India and explored its rich and diverse cultural heritage and social fabric. She is the author of Koka, published by the National Book Trust of India, The Queen's Last Salute, and the e-book Anarkali and Salim, a retelling of Mughal-e-Azam, both published by Jagannath Books. We welcome you, ma'am. We welcome Madam.
And her latest book, Bhagmati, which has just come out as well.
Okay. We welcome Madam Sutapa Basu, a best-selling, award-winning author as well as educationalist, poet, storyteller, and a translator. She is also well known for her best-selling historical fiction, Padmavati, The Queen Tells Her Own Story. Her works have been awarded with Best Fiction Award, Award for Excellence in Publishing, and many more. Her recent mystery book, Murder in the Jungle for Young Adults, was released this year, which is also one of the rapid-selling books. We welcome you, ma'am. We have with us Madam Anuja Chandramouli, a best-selling author and New Age Indian classicist, widely regarded as one of the finest writers in mythology, historical fiction, and fantasy. She is also an accomplished TEDx speaker and storyteller. Some of her renowned books are Kartikeya, the Destroyer's Son, Prithviraj Chauhan, the Emperor of Hearts, Padmavati, the Burning Queen, Ganga, the Constant Goddess, and Muhammad bin Dukhlak, Tale of a Tyrant. To moderate this session, we have with us Mr. Deepankar Mukherjee.
We have Mona Verma as well in the list. Do you see?
Okay, we welcome.
So allow me to introduce Mona Verma. So Mona is a corporate trainer, author, speaker, and she's been in multiple forums across literature festivals, TEDx, schools, colleges, name it, and she's been there. She's been writing for more than a decade now, has got several books to her credit. She's a master in retelling stories from the perspective of cities like Banaras. She has captured the ethos of folk tales across the Himalayan landscape, and she is also an author for children's books. We welcome you, Mona.
Thank you, sir. To moderate this session, we have with us Mr. Deepankar Mukherjee, a management graduate from IIT Madras and founder of Redomania Publishing, known for its eclectic mix of books. He has also been instrumental in curating literature festivals and organizing writing workshops. He takes keen interest in working with authors to create books that readers love. So the topic itself is so very captivating that may make us, all of us, dwell deep into forgetting the time frame. I must appreciate the guest for having accepted and structured this topic into a time frame of 40 minutes, inclusive of the audience questionnaire. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, we hand over the session to the ladies with a huge round of applause.
Thank you so much. Sutapa, to you. Quick lesson on fact about Sutapa. She has authored more than 250 textbooks for schools in ELT series and many other series. So many of you kids may be actually teaching her books in school as well. So to begin with that and jump into the fiction that you've written. Okay, we all have lived with very, very boring history classes. What is the method of making history engaging and live and exciting?
So, most of you, जो बच्चे यहाँ बैठे हैं, वो सब सोचते होंगे हिस्ट्री का मतलब क्या है कि डेट्स याद कर लो, किंग्स के नाम याद कर लो, बस यही है ना हिस्ट्री में, और तो कुछ है नहीं. और दूसरी बात, वो सब कुछ इतने दिन पहले हुए हैं कि how does it matter to us? That is what all of you must be thinking. But you will be surprised to know that history influences us much more than any other subject. And the reason is that anything you want to understand in the present, maybe war क्यों हो रहा है गाजा में, यूक्रेन को रशिया ने क्यों अटैक किया है, you need to go back to the history of those nations. तभी आपको समझ में आएगा. That is why history is very important, and history can be made very interesting by, having kind of presentations. You can do role plays. Like for example, अगर आप Egyptian history पढ़ रहे हैं, तो आप role play कर सकते हो. और Egyptian pharaoh वो अपना coat कैसे hold करता है, and it will become interesting. So history doesn't have to be from textbooks. History can be in many forms. All you have to do is look for the way that will make history interesting to you.
Absolutely. So taking history out of textbooks and into the real world. Moupia, question to you. You picked up Rani Jhansi as your first character. From there till Rani Bhagmati, the journey has been very exciting. Very popular character, lesser known character. What's the decision-making factor for you to write about characters from history?
So as we all know, Rani Lakshmibai is probably one of the most famous warrior queens in our country. And there's a lot that has been documented about her because she was just 150 years ago, now almost 200 years ago. And so she's the epitome of valor, of bravery, of courage, of sacrifice. Now she is well known. She is very well known. But on the other hand, shifting from Rani Lakshmibai to my recent book, which is about Rani Bhagmati, she was the queen of Hyderabad. Now the difference between the two characters is that on one hand Rani Lakshmibai is so well known, but Rani Bhagmati there is nothing about her in the official records. She is completely undocumented in the official history of the Qutub Shahi dynasty, of which she was the queen. Why is that so? What has happened is, here we bring in the factor of myth, legend, which I think we shall discuss in detail right now. Myth is something that has been created, and legend is something that has been handed down through generations, through folklore, through word of mouth, through storytelling. So, where is the connect between history like Rani Lakshmibai, who is so well documented, and someone like Rani Bhagmati, who is just in the legends of Hyderabad? But wherever you go in Hyderabad, to whomsoever you speak, Rani Bhagmati is known. She is known. She is known everywhere by everybody. I spoke to a Banjaran woman, she has heard of Rani Lakshmibai. That was almost 450 years ago. How was that so? So I would say here that just as Rani Lakshmibai has fascinated me, there are lesser known queens who have had an equally great impact on our history. Because today, a very interesting little tidbit is that there is a small temple in Hyderabad next to the Charminar, adjacent to the Charminar, called the Bhagyalakshmi temple, which has become the hotbed of political discussions and arguments. BJP is using that as their platform to start all their rallies there, and they want to change the name of the city from Hyderabad to Bhagnagar, which was the original name of the city, which was named after Rani Bhagmati. So what Sutapa just said, how relevant is it today? Just like Rani Lakshmibai is relevant, she encourages a lot of young women today. Rani Bhagmati, in her own way, is also relevant. So I see a very, I would say a very seamless mix between myth, legend, and history. So
that's really interesting to bring in the concept of lesser known characters and their important role to be played. But you picked up a very important point on myth, which I'll bring to Anuja. But one tidbit about her, she's also a wonderful, trained Bharatanatyam dancer. And she has the power of dreaming. I've heard she dreams, next morning wakes up, puts a finger on a pen, and wow, a book is ready. She's prolific. She's written almost 15 books in last, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years. So that's how she does, she morning wakes up, I am now going to favor this god today. And here, lo and behold, my book is ready. So yes, from history to mythology, how did you build these stories? How much did you read upon mythology to get these stories out of almost every goddess possible that you can think of?
Thanks for that, Dipak. Dipankar. I got my daily dose of flattery, much needed for my diet. But what he said right there, that is mythology. Okay, that is myth right there that I dream. I wake up in the morning, I wave a magic wand and a book pops out. I wish that were true. I wish it would make my life so much simpler. But it's grunt work. It's hard work. It's sweat and perspiration and tears. So not a glamorous dancer image I portray on Instagram mainly to get followers, to convince them to read my books. But to answer your question the way I see it, history has plenty of myth to it. And mythology has a lot of historical elements to it. So I find it very weird that there are extremists on either side who act as though history or mythology is set in stone. This is exactly what happened in the Ramayana. This is exactly what happened in the Mahabharata. I know this to be the truth. And we live in India where we actually kill each other over the stories. So this has always been very, very, very weird for me. Because see, if you dabble at all in history or myth, you find that a lifetime is not enough to call yourself a scholar, someone who knows everything there is to know. Just pick one text from mythology. Just pick either the Ramayana or Mahabharata. You spend every day of your life on it, and you still would not have plumbed the very depths of it. That's the beauty of history and myth. And what I love about both, whether it's history or mythology, is that it's like a living organism which evolves with time. I would love to have 16-year-old me's metabolism. But no, now I have to settle for compliments because my doctor says I have to watch my diet. You evolve, you change, there's baggage added to your hips or otherwise. It's the same with history and mythology. We pad it over the years. And even when we're talking right now, can anyone say this is exactly what they spoke? I might say, the Dipankar offended me. He insulted me and create a big storm on Twitter. But that's not what happened, no? But I'll make a convincing argument just to get publicity for me. You'll be happy as my publisher, but as a person, you'll be upset.
And scared.
See, when you can't have some sort of consensus about what happened today, how can you have the arrogance to say I know exactly how it went down with history or mythology? So I would always urge humility and tolerance, for history and mythology, and just love and respect for the subject. That's what keeps me going.
Brilliant. Stretching now myth to legends, as she had said, and to you, Mona. You've now taken this another step further and captured legends which have been handed down over generations in the hills and mountains of India into a book called Scent of Himalayas. So how did you go about capturing these legends? Did you talk to people? Did you read books? Were they hearsay? What was the source of the legends?
Thank you for that question, and also thanks for introducing me so well, Dipankar. So when it comes to the Scent of Himalayas, as you know, and the students are yet to know, that there are 20 stories from the entire Himalayan belt, from Jammu and Kashmir up till Arunachal Pradesh. There's a story from every state that there is in the belt. And what's so unique about these stories? Most of these stories are unheard of, and they won't be heard unless and until a storyteller takes a responsibility of telling and retelling those stories. The reason is that from the mountain belt, most of the people are migrating to the cities for work. And when they migrate from their hometowns to the cities, they leave behind the stories, they leave behind the cultures and the legends that made them and gave them the life that they had until now. And when their life is sedimented in the glass and the brick structures of the city, all those things are forgotten, or they will be forgotten. So, and there are these wonderful stories. I was born and raised in Haridwar, so we had lots of people from the Garhwal and the Kumaon range working with us and for us, and they had very interesting stories. So I wanted to hear the undocumented human narrative from them, how they tell the stories, then go back to researching on those stories. What are these places that they are talking about? Why do they only talk about the oak tree or the corn cobs in this particular story? So research goes into it, and then you are given to understand that the kind of things that they are talking about are not the things, or those beliefs are not limited only to that region. They have almost a global relevance. For example, if somebody in the Hey Mata story, if they are talking about Mother Earth and they are telling the woman Sarut not to shear the oak tree, why? Why just the oak tree? Because this tree is the symbol of abundance not only in our culture but also in the Greek and the Egyptian culture as well. And why just the corn cobs and not just wheat or something else? So when we are talking about these stories, we are also giving back to the younger generation the belief that our heritage is ancient but it is not absolute. Prachin hai, jarjar nahi hai. So the stories are very relevant stories and there's a scientific logic that backs them. And that is why I wanted to retell those stories.
Absolutely, that's brilliant. Sutapa, coming to you. Interestingly, Sutapa and Anuja have both written on a wonderful queen named Padmavati. While I will take Anuja's view later, coming to Padmavati for you, which is your bestseller book, Sutapa. Was she really from Sri Lanka? And how can a 18-year-old child, I would say, walk into fire and, commit Jauhar? What do you believe gave her the strength of that character so many years back?
So, there's been a lot of controversy as far as Padmavati is concerned. I think everybody knows, especially when the movie Padmavat came out, सबने बहुत इसके बारे में लड़ाई की है, riots हुए हैं कि why is Jauhar being made so famous and made popular? But why is it that we only connect Padmavati to Jauhar? Who was Padmavati? That was my question. Yes, you just asked that was she from Sri Lanka? So now I again come back to the mythology that they were talking about. I actually went to Chittorgarh to find out about Padmavati. And there were so many stories about her, so many myths about her. From the people who were staying there, who were living there, I went and saw her palace. And when you see all that, you will tend to believe that yes, she did exist. Now, whether she was from Sri Lanka or not, that is to some extent, it's not so clear. But then I went back to very old, a kind of epic poem, which has actually been written by a Sufi poet. I mean, you'll be surprised if it was written by a Muslim Sufi poet, and that poem is called Padmavat. And there he describes her as coming from an island which is in the southeast. You can take it as any island. And I have in the book Padmavati, I have not mentioned that it is Sri Lanka. It's up to you to think whether it is Sri Lanka or some other island. But yes, she was not an Indian. She came from another country, she came to Chittorgarh, she had that strength of character and personality to accept whatever she saw in Chittorgarh. The restrictions, because you know that Chittorgarh is a Rajputana, and Rajputs are very, very strict and traditional, especially about the way the women should behave. But she came from possibly a place where all these restrictions were not there. She grew up in a place where women were given a lot of importance. In fact, she grew up as an heir to her kingdom. Her father brought her up as an heir to the kingdom. So she was brought up like a prince rather than a princess. And she was a warrior in her own right. But she decided to marry and come to Chittorgarh and accept all that was there in the in-laws family. She tried to make changes. Eventually, she did make some changes, and possibly that was the reason why she's only known for the Jauhar. Nobody really knows about Padmavati, but maybe her voice was suppressed. That was what my question was. Was her voice suppressed? And that's what the story is all about. If you read it, you will realize that probably she had her own story to tell, but nobody allowed her to tell it. And when you said she was 18 years old, actually my research says that she was only 13 years old when she decided to walk into fire. It was her own decision. Nobody compared her. So it made me constantly think that what kind of woman she must have been. What kind of strength she must have been in her. So there was something very extraordinary about her. And that is what made me research more and more deeper into her personality. And that's what my story Padmavati shows.
And now interestingly, I would want to have a counter view from Anuja. Anuja, what did your research say? That will be the magic of mythology, A story versus B story. So yes, Anuja.
For me, the interest
Anuja says, I have one question to ask both of you. Would you consider Padmavati as a mythological figure or as a historical figure?
history for me. Okay. I'm glad you asked that. See, for me, when you ask me questions like this, I answer with another question. Do you believe in the tooth fairy?
Okay.
See, if you talk to a kiddo whose parents keep a little present under her pillow when every time a tooth falls, the kid believes in the tooth fairy. That's the kid's version of reality. Will you be heartless enough to go to the kid and say, let me explain the science behind this. Let me explain the logic and rationale behind this. Whether it's Santa Claus or the tooth fairy or anything. The kid has one version of reality, you have another. That's how I see it. Everyone has one version, and I'm not going to be politically correct and say every version is valid, because some versions are just plain stupid. Okay? That's the truth of it. That's the truth of it. So for me, it's irrelevant. When people ask me, is it true, is it not true, I am not concerned with history, mythology. I don't nitpick through those kind of things. Lots of people get pissed off with that, I understand. But the way I see it, whether in mythology or history, why do we glorify this decision women are forced to make out of desperation? About Padmavati, there is absolutely no consensus as to whether she's a goddess or whether an actual historical figure. If the jury is still out on it, they can deliberate for eternity and we won't arrive at a decision. Was she real or was she not? So I'm saying the point is history does document that Johar was performed on a regular basis and it was all about Rajput pride. The way I see it, men play these games of war and women burn on the altar of male pride. And so for me, even this glorification of Johar is simply unpardonable. In mythology, you have the Ramayana where you have this infamous Agni Pariksha, where the myths tell us a virtuous woman can walk into flames and emerge on the other side. What is the reality of it? Do you know anyone who has survived the flames? You can be virtuous as all. First of all, I refuse to believe in virtuous women. I think all women are part sinner, part saint. Nobody is 100% virtuous, and even if you are, you walk into flames, the flames do not discriminate, all burn equally. That is, see, we can't have multiple versions of this truth from what we know of fire. Okay? So, and yet we have this ugly belief that if you're virtuous, nothing can harm you. That's such a stupid statement, and you know it was written by ancient incels with monstrous egos. So I will not condone it in my writing. So what happened, so many historical facts suggest that a lot of women were dosed with opium. Because you can't go kicking and screaming into the flames, no? The entire mood is ruined, right? It has to be like how Sanjay Leela Bansali envisioned it. You have little children, pregnant women, all dolled up to the nines, and the guy is obsessed with color coordination and heavy jewelry. I don't know, see, Deepika Padukone in that movie, she had tears in her eyes from the heavy nose rings. As a dancer, you wear that heavy stuff, your eyes start watering. It gives you gravitas. No, women don't like to dress up like that and walk into the flames with that look in their eyes as though you're doing something great. No, you've been asked to choose between rape and fire. That's not a choice. What kind of, see, so many of them chose to marry the conqueror. Why not? Why can't all men are stupid? Might as well marry one and settle down. These guys are rich boys, so better to be miserable in comfort than suffer in poverty in some brothel somewhere. So why not marry the dude? Who cares otherwise? It's not able to make a film about that. But the girl who chose to live, now that's my kind of heroine. The girl who chose to live.
And just to add to that, this is her Girl Talk avatar. So she's written a latest book which is called Girl Talk, which is about women and their ideas. So this is her Girl Talk avatar today. Okay, coming back to the topic. Yeah, one man in. Okay, let's get back to the topic, please. Yeah. Coming back to the topic over here, Moupia, question to you. After all this wonderful, she quoted now. So, coming back to Bhagmati. See, these characters, when they are more than 500-600 or maybe 800 years old, how do you find about them? They will only be in people's memories and different folklore? Has something been written about them, captured in manuscripts? What was your research?
Okay, Bhagmati is a very interesting character, unlike other warrior queens. She herself is not a very huge figure or a very prominent figure. I mean, by herself. She became famous because she was supposedly the only queen, Hindu queen of a medieval Muslim ruler. That is very surprising. Now, like I just said a little while earlier, that she was, there's no official record of Bhagmati in any of the Qutub Shahi dynasties, hagiography or records. So then how did I research about her? You will be surprised to know that every contemporary traveler who came at that time, Muhammad Quli Qutub Shah was a contemporary of Akbar. So we have Farishta and we have Abul Fazl and we have, Faizi, all of them writing about these kings and, I love kings and queens by the way. I love to write about them. Each one of them has written about Bhagmati and Bhavnagar. How come? When the official dynasty records do not mention her, why is it that I have found about Bhagmati and Bhavnagar in every contemporary traveler, chronicler of the times? Be it the Mughal chronicler, be it the Deccan Sultanate's chroniclers. Farishta was in Bijapur, but he wrote about the entire Qutub Shahi kingdom. There were so many of the travelers and chroniclers who wrote about it. So there was a lot of material on Bhagmati of those times. And what is another interesting thing about this lady Bhagmati is that for 400 years, historians and scholars, I'm not a historian or a scholar, I'm just a storyteller, they have debated over her incessantly for 400 years saying she existed, she didn't exist. That has kept her name alive. There was a 20th century very famous historian called Harun Khan Sherwani, Professor Harun Khan Sherwani. He is totally against Bhagmati's existence. He says she did not exist, there is no record of her. And Dr. Zor, who was his contemporary, you should see the way they fought with each other over Bhagmati, who lived 400 years ago. These two eminent scholars of the early 20th century. He says she was there, she was very much there, everybody has mentioned her, her name was deliberately removed by the noblemen of Muhammad Quli's court. And the mullahs and the religious leaders, because they were all Persians, they were Shias, and the entire Qutub Shahi dynasty they wir Shias. So they were very enamored, but also very influenced by the Persians. So his own prime minister was a Persian called Mir Momin Astarabadi, who is being held responsible to remove her name. But fact that scholars have debated over her, century after century, has kept her name alive. So I have found a lot of material on her, a lot of books written on. In fact, H.K. Sherwani, to dismiss Bhagmati, has dedicated some 20-30 pages of his book, just to dismiss her. I mean, so she continues to live through the folklores, and I've spoken to a lot of people in Hyderabad. A lot of shows, representations of their love story are still carrying on. In theatre, in films. Incidentally, Muzaffar Ali made a film, I think for Doordarshan. It was a miserable film, very surprising. On all the historical facts were wrong, and but it was made in '87 again on Bhagmati and Muhammad Quli's love story. So her name lives on, surprisingly.
I'm so glad I'm seeing some kick-ass women on stage who don't mince their words. Very, very interesting. Back to you, Mona. You've also written a book on Banaras as a city and the good and bad and ugly are the myths and legends living in the city. Tell us something about that enigmatic city and how did you go about discovering its myths and legends?
Okay, so when it comes to this book, Banaras, one of my favorite books, like Lost and Found in Banaras. So I was at PHU. I'd gone over there to deliver a lecture, and after that they took us towards the Manikarnika Ghat, the Harishchandra Ghat for a deco. And once you cross those, those narrow, dingy alleyways of Banaras, you come across these child widows. Of course, that practice is not prevalent anymore, but the older ones already they are staying in the ashrams over there, and also in the moksha, the mukti bhavans over there. Those women are already there, and these women, they have their hair stone short. So I asked somebody, I can understand the palette garb of white and all those other things, but why this insipid meal of just boiled rice with little bit of just a dash of salt and their headstone shirt? So the logic and the reason that I was given was so that they do not incite any carnal desire in a man. So they don't put on any beef, right, in the right places, and the head should be tonsured so that they look unattractive. So we asked to all these young girls and boys over here, when we see all those reels on Instagram, how to be slimmer, how to have thicker mop of hair, how to have bushy eyebrows and whatnot, right? Out there, there be young girls, the child widows who are there for no fault of theirs, who have to make a deliberate attempt to look unattractive because a man cannot take up the responsibility of his own physical sensibilities. So look at all those people. So I think a story needed to be told. A story needed to be told about the prevalent dialogue over there which says Ran Sant Siri Sanyasi Inse Bachai to Sawai Kashi. So that is the word that is being used for those women. And as you go further, not talking about the human beings that make up Kashi, there's another prevalent dialogue over there, and which says, "Badham kabhi na chhodiye aisi Kashi dham कि मरने पर तो गंगा मिले और जीते जी लंगड़ा आम." So I guess the story, Kashi is such a unique town. Almost शहर है Kashi. Everybody sings in Kashi, right? Right from the boat wala over there to the one who's making thandai. So on the pounder of thandai, they have ghungroos attached. So that it makes a chan 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 sound. So everybody sings over there. So where life is celebrated and that death is a currency of a particular town, where death is feared in other parts of the world, but for Banaras it is its currency. Over there are also those human beings who are mere white shadows because they are ostracized from the society. These girls come over there, I think, and their stories need to be told. Somebody has to tell their stories, and also the social, the psychological, the reasons, the practical reasons, and the religious reasons that brought these girls to that particular place. You know, all these widows, they are brought to Navdweep, Kashi, Mathura, because they say the water bodies. They are young girls over there, right? So they have their desires, their goals, their dreams, and a right to live and a right to love. But they are always brought towards the water bodies or the town situated close to the water bodies. So because they said that the water bodies calm them. It has a calming effect on them. So I think the story of Kashi and the child widows needed to be told for men to understand what dash they are.
Very good. Let's open it up for audience. Any questions for the speakers? Yeah. So I'll come to Sir and then, do we have the volunteers here right now? No, right? Let me just go down.
Volunteers?
Sir, to you.
That was a wonderful session. Thank you all. My question is for Sutapa ji. Can you share the name of the Sufi poet and the work that you alluded to when you were talking about Padmavati?
I'm sorry, can you just explain?
You mentioned the Sufi poet.
Yes.
So I'm just curious about the name of the poet and the name of the work.
I have to actually go back.
Jayasee.
Yes,
Jayasee.
Thank you.
So
Jayasee by Padmavati. That's the first historical reference to Padmavati actually.
And he wrote it somewhere in UP.
About 150 years, probably 150 years after her existence. Yeah, coming to you for a question. Yeah, I'll come.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. मेरा क्वेश्चन मैम आपसे ही है कि कुछ इंटेलेक्चुअल से हम सुनते हैं कि हिस्ट्री जो है हर सालों में बदलती रहती है. तो जो फैक्ट्स फैब्रिकेटेड हुए हैं अभी बहुत पहले से, सो आप इस चीज पे अपनी राय क्या रखती हैं?
So at the end of the day, history जो है वो it is a story which has been created from evidence, and evidence is interpreted by historians. अब एक historian किसी एक तरीके से interpret करता है, दूसरी historian दूसरे तरीके से interpret करता है. So you will get 2-3 views of the same Same event, same historical event. I'll give you one very, very clear example. All over here in India, we have heard कि नादिर शाह ने कोहिनूर चुराया था. ये हम पढ़ते हैं हिस्ट्री बुक्स में. नादिर शाह ने पिकअप फोन चुराया था. लेकिन that's not the truth. So we have to really delve and research into what the historians have said to find out the truth. That is what I did, and what I discovered is, जब नादिर शाह ने मुगल एम्परर को करनाल के बैटल में डिफीट किया, who became the emperor of Delhi? Nadir Shah. Am I right? Yes. So the entire empire belonged to him, and Muhammad Ali, who was the emperor at that time, he was so afraid of Nadir Shah कि उसको मार डालेगा. He went to Nadir Shah, opened the Mughal treasury and said, "It is yours." So what he took from India, whether he took the Kohinoor or he took the Peacock, वो तो अपना सामान ही लेके गया ना Persia. So you see, history is interpreted sometimes very incorrectly. So we really have to research, and I would say take it with a pinch of salt, whatever historians say. Yes, history evolves, but history तब evolve करेगा जब आप सच ढूंढने की कोशिश करोगे. And a lot of historians are doing it today. Besides, I want to say one more thing. The history of India has been, whatever the history of India that we study in the textbooks today, has been basically taken from the history that has been written by Western historians. They have written it from their own focus and own angle. They will never say that any of their countrymen or anybody from the West has done anything wrong. We need to write history from the Indian point of view. We need to show Indians how history should have been written, where Indians have won, where Indians have done something. So we have to write history from the Indian point of view. That's very, very important today.
Stories change when storytellers change.
Absolutely. Yeah, coming to the next question.
Anuja ma'am, my question is like that. It's not about history term. If we go for the fiction stories or love stories, written by many writers, we observe many writers who are male, like for example Durjay Datta and Ravinder Singh, Chetan Bhagat. But what if I want to read more about the love stories from the point of view of women? काफी कम है. काफी कम है. Means there are a number of stories from the point of view of men, love story, like बहुत ज़्यादा fantasize करते हैं men. Okay, love story. What about women? Women means मुझे पढ़ना है, but means limited numbers of books are there, fiction, love stories.
Korean writers are not about love. No, you must read the latest book, this called Girl Talk.
Yeah, that's why I asked that question to Anuja.
Of how the women can fantasize. See, first of all, I don't think, I think this, I've never heard a question like this, because mostly the prevailing view is that men write about war and action and all stuff with meat on the bones, and women write frothy love stories, like your MMBs and your Victorian novels. So I don't think gender has anything to do with it. It all comes down to taste. Me personally, if you give me love story versus B-grade horror, I'm gonna go with horror. So Girl Talk is like that. People are expecting a frothy romance because there's a nice pink cover, there's a girl in a white dress on a swing. So they're expecting something different, but it's more dark and violent. And it's in touch with my B-grade horror preferences. So you will find whatever you're looking for. And I don't think women avoid romance or anything like that. In fact, I think, my classmates, all of them back in the day, they used to gorge themselves on romances. Me on horror. So it all comes from personal preferences.
That's why I asked the question to you.
So you should check out Girl Talk, but do not expect.
But very interesting, Anuja, we will have a quiz on B-grade horror later on. B is very interesting. Next question over here.
My question is open to anyone who wants to answer, but what are the unexplored periods, figures, even cities or regions in history that you would like to explore further? You don't have to give spoilers for your next book or anything like that, but what is something that you haven't tackled yet that you're passionate about tackling?
Great question. Let's start with Moupia, then we'll have all the panelists answer one by one.
I'm not sure whether I'll actually get down to writing it. But there is a story, a very, very interesting story, a little away from India, but it is connected to India. That is based during the World War II. Okay, so it is about, I won't tell you what it is about, but I have not yet decided to write it. But yes, I would definitely like to explore, actually, you know, in India, you turn a corner and there's a story. I mean, there are stories all over. So, I would like to explore how, in my first book actually I have spoken about how Second World War and British occupation in the 1940s affected the common man of Bengal. Okay, in my book Hoka, that's what young adults. So that period I think I would like to explore a little more, connected with the world wars.
Very interesting.
So just quickly, I think there are lots of unexplored realms in history and mythology which need to see the light of day. So I'm just, I don't choose my characters choose me. So it all depends on, who finds me first.
She just kept it a secret, by the way, in a different way. Yes.
So we've read in history that Ashoka becomes a Buddhist after the War of Kalinga. But somehow...
Can't stop her there. She's giving out the name of her next book. Let's
I'm
just
not
close
giving
it.
I'm not giving out the name of the next book. What I'm trying to say is that is a period which is pretty unexplored. And I believe, this is my personal belief, and I need to research more into it, that I don't think just looking at the dead people, so many dead people, actually changed Ashoka's mind. I believe, because it's human, that there had to be some personal loss, something that affected his own life. And that is what made him completely turn away from what he was doing, conquering lands, and become a Buddhist. So that is what I would like to explore a lot. And here I just want to add something more. This is a book which is already published, so my publisher shouldn't have a problem with this. Moupia was also saying that unexplored women characters in history. We hear about Ahilya Bai, we read about Lakshmi Bai, we know everything about them. But I believe that there are many, many more women, not necessarily born as queens and princesses, whose lives were as impactful, who wanted to change history, and many of them changed history at a period when women were not allowed to have a voice. And one of them, I just heard, was a lady called Parvati Bai. Parvati Bai was the wife of Maratha general Sadashiv Rao Bhau, who led the Maratha forces in the Third Battle of Panipat against the Afghans. And the Marathas lost the battle. So historians have been constantly finding out why did they lose the battle, because they lost the battle, there was no Maratha Samrajya. There would have been a Maratha Samrajya all over India. But what happened is, because they lost the battle, the British took over and enslaved us for 300 years. So that is a turning point in India's history. And you will not believe...
Sorry, we don't have time for questions, and I'm really sorry I have to stop you 10 seconds for your answer and then to close the session. The next month people are standing outside.
So probably,
by the way, sorry.
Because
Parvati Bai is available downstairs. Go read the book. It is really interesting on how history labeled somebody a traitor when she was not. Yes.
So, since I've written about the Vedas and the Puranas also, and we know that they're termed as Shrutis and Smritis. So Shruti is what you hear over the generations, and Smritis is what you remember. And now there are physical evidences that are being explored, which explain that these things actually happened. They were not just myths. So if you go to the Shukratal, which is close to Saharanpur in Uttar Pradesh, you know about the story from the Bhagavad Purana, which is there, about Shukadev reciting the entire Bhagavad Purana to King Parikshit. And also about the astronomical dating of the Ram Setu that there is, about the Adi Vinayaka temples, which also explains that when the boy Vinayaka, when he was beheaded, what did Parvati ask Shiva for? So why do we have that Adi Vinayaka temple? So all those things which are taken as myths or things that people do not believe in, when we have the physical evidences of those places, of those stories existing, I want to write about those and bring forth the truth that is being labeled as a myth all along.
Thank you so much, and on that wonderful note, a big thank you to these powerful ladies who are on stage. It's brilliant talking to you and hearing your views. Audience, their books are available downstairs. You can pick them up. Pick them up. It's very important. You can interact with them. They're available in the speaker lounge and outside. You can catch hold of them and ask them more about it. Thank you so much. And the photographs available for all of you over there. You can pick up and see while you were speaking. So thank you so much, and audience, you were great. The next session starts immediately. Don't leave. It's even more engaging and a wonderful one. Thank you.